Hi everybody, Jane here, and today I'm going to be doing a review of the new movie Elvis. I went and saw it in theaters this morning with my mother and wanted to give you my general thoughts about it so that you can make a decision about whether it is a movie you would like to go and see or if it's one that you'd rather skip. Before we go into that, I do want to remind you, if you are new, to please like and subscribe if you would like more content from me. And I would like to briefly remind you that I'm an author, and particularly I wanted to talk about my book, Educating Autumn, today. This book is 99 cents for the ebook edition on Amazon right now, and it is a dystopian romance. Autumn comes from the country of Josiathan in a not so distant future, where women have been stripped of many of their rights, including the right to an education. Autumn has taught herself how to read, and she is concerned that once she is given as a wife, she will, or bought as a wife, as they do in this culture, she will not have the time or ability to read books as she does now. Orion is from Josiathan originally, but he has been educated in a different country where they don't have the same dystopian rules and laws about women's rights. So he finds out that Autumn can read and decides that he must have her as a wife, and romance ensues. So if this sounds like a book that you would enjoy, please pick it up for 99 cents currently on Amazon. It is available other places books are sold, but prices may vary. All right, so the movie Elvis. A couple things I need to disclaim. The first one is that I was born in the mid 80s, so I don't have like a nostalgic connection to Elvis. And I think that's very important with this movie because it was interesting, but it didn't affect me on the same emotional level it did my mother, who obviously that was music that she grew up with. So there is a scene at the end where they show actual clips from Elvis himself, the actual Elvis, not the movie Elvis, and she just started bawling. So I do think that there is a real nostalgia factor here, and as I talk about it, please understand that I don't have that nostalgia factor and that that is somewhat clouding my review of the movie. This movie is supposed to be a based on the life of Elvis and to talk kind of about how he came to fame and then what happened with his fame ultimately. It is a fairly long movie. I think it is like 2.5 hours. And I will be honest, there were points where I felt like it could have been cut down a little bit. I also felt like some of the storytelling choices and some of the videography was a little bit strange, not necessarily choices I would have made had I been making the movie. I would say overall, this movie for me was a 4 out of 5. I recognize that it is a very good movie. It was a well made movie and it was worth the watch, but I definitely didn't love it, and it's not something that I would necessarily go back to and watch again and again, although I do want to learn more now about the life of Elvis. So, a couple things that I think this movie did so well. This movie had great costuming. This movie also was really great at focusing on the historical time period. So, one of the things that was happening during the early movie was segregation and the attempts to desegregate the United States. In the movie, and I believe in real life too, Elvis grew up very mixed in with the Black community because of where he lived. So he listened to a lot of that music and uh, became acquainted with their dance styles. And when he brought that to the media as a white singer, it caused a lot of issues. And it caused a lot of issues, not necessarily because it was vulgar with the hip shaking and stuff, although that was a complaint, but more so that it wasn't white. So I think they really looked at the racism involved with the issues with the music. I think they looked really well at the time period. And so I really enjoyed that part of the movie. The movie is told through the villain's eyes, which I thought was an interesting choice and not necessarily a choice I would have made. So Tom Hanks plays the Colonel, and the Colonel is the one who is the agent for Elvis, and the story is told from his perspective. I do think, as a storytelling, I think it was a good storytelling device because then any parts of the story that are inaccurate can just be kind of shrugged off as, oh, it's the Colonel telling the story, and he has reasons to not be completely honest with us about things. So we see the Colonel meeting Elvis and helping Elvis start his career, and then trying to rein Elvis in to make him more palatable to the people who are going to be paying money, particularly advertisers who don't want their products associated. They love the popularity of Elvis, but they don't want their products associated with somebody who's gyrating their hips like Elvis does. So there is a lot of like trying to tone Elvis down to be palatable to what America wanted at that time. And kind of the Colonel trying to rebrand Elvis in an image that he thought would make them both the most money. So the Colonel has reasons to not be honest with us, and I think that while it was a weird choice and I didn't necessarily like that we were getting the story from the Colonel, who is in very poor health at this time, at the time of the telling of the story, he's in very poor health and he's telling us about working with Elvis. And I think it was an odd choice to have it be through the villain's eyes, especially in the beginning, but I think it was nice because you got if I'm not completely honest, it's because it's from an unreliable, dishonest narrator. I don't know how much of the movie is historically accurate as far as like to Elvis's life. I know that they made a lot of changes with the relationship with Elvis and Priscilla because I'd read up a little bit on that. And in the movie, they do mention that Priscilla was a teenager when they met, but it is portrayed as her being like 18 or 19, when in reality, I believe she was like 14 and he was in his 20s. So there were definitely some changes made, probably to make things more palatable to the audience and to make Elvis look a little better in places where he might not have, and also at times places that make the Colonel look better. Although I thought the device with that a lot of times worked well because the Colonel's telling us, no, no, I loved Elvis. I did all this stuff for him. But we can see as the audience that Elvis is not, that it's hindering Elvis's music, not so much helping. So overall, I thought the movie was interesting. I liked learning about Elvis, and now like I want to read his biography and see what was true, what wasn't. It did make him a very sympathetic character, though I also feel like it could have made him a little bit more well-rounded. We know he's close to his family and he has this real strong sense of family in the movie, and we know that he wants to be famous, he wants to be an actor, he wants to be a musician, and we kind of follow him on that journey of trying to find out what that means and what fame means as he gets it. And how it's not always as fulfilling as he'd like, particularly once he gets into making movies. He makes movies and decides that's not so much what his heart really wants to do, even though he thought it was. I did think there was some elements of the story, particularly in the beginning, that were confusing. Elvis has this group of friends around him, and I never really understood exactly what their relationship was. We are told at one point by the colonel that they were cousins and friends from back home that he is supporting, but I wasn't really sure like what they contributed later on. Like in the beginning of the story, some of them are playing music with him and they're like his original band, but there were just some things like those relationships that weren't well explained, and I could have done with a little more understanding of that, and also of Elvis as a person. The focus of the movie is on him as with this big goal of fame and fortune. And we have a few moments where it deviates to a more personal Elvis, but particularly with things with his family. But I felt like we didn't get to know him as a person, just as this icon. And again, with the colonel narrating the story, that makes good sense because the colonel wouldn't have necessarily bonded with Elvis on a personal level, but the agent would have known the big crisis things that happened in his life and would have also known his music and his musical ambition. So again, I think it makes sense with the storytelling, but for me, I would have liked to know more about Elvis as a person and appreciated him. Um, I will say the actor that plays Elvis is really good looking. With that eye makeup and stuff, I was like, oh boy. Because I really tend to like a more feminine look in men. That's just what my thing is. And so it was some good eye candy of that Elvis on the screen. Um, of the actor that played him, I think did a really good job. I will say the girl's reactions the first time he starts gyrating his hips and stuff when he plays music, I don't know what it was really like because I wasn't there. And again, I haven't read biographies about it or anything, but it was, I think, over the top for this movie. I hope it was over the top and that's not really what people did, because these girls just act like they have never seen a boy do anything. And they are just going crazy with animalistic desire as he's up there playing and moving and wiggling. And it's crazy. And again, I think too, as like a modern woman, we see we see television and we see bare-chested men and people in all kinds of situations on TV. So maybe I'm just immune to it, and maybe it was such a big deal that this dude is gyrating his hips a little on stage that the women are just going crazy. It's like a mating call thing happening. It was really, in my opinion, over the top. But again, I don't know what it was like historically. Obviously, I think that part was played up a little bit as to why he is having all of these issues with his career because he wants to wiggle and gyrate with the music, and the censors feel that that is not appropriate for family entertainment, and they want him to be a family entertainer instead of the musician that he was born to be, basically the way he wants to perform and what people like about him. So I do think that was a little crazy, and again, I wasn't there. I don't know, but just some of the early scenes in the movie, it took me a while to really appreciate what they were trying to do. So if you get in there and in the first like 15 or 20 minutes, you're going, what is this? Try to stick it out, because I definitely was feeling that the first probably 15 minutes. I was going, this is really strange, because just the camera angles and the choices they made directive wise, and yeah, some of the videography and stuff, I wasn't really loving it in the beginning, and it took me a while to be like, okay, I like what we're doing now. I didn't necessarily like the beginning very well, but as the movie progressed, I thought it was very good. And as I said, at the very end of the movie, they did show actual news footage, or maybe not news footage, but like actual productions that Elvis had done. And that was kind of cool that they incorporated it in the very end of the movie. Uh, just so everybody knows, there was bad words. I don't recall there being nudity, and there wasn't like explicit sexual scenes, but there was some sexuality implied. So if those are things that you don't want to see, this may not be the right movie, but again, it was pretty mild. So I think it was a good movie, and if you really love Elvis, you might really appreciate this movie. So especially if you have some Elvis nostalgia, I am giving it a 4 out of 5 because I think it was well made, not necessarily from my enjoyment level. My enjoyment level was more of a 3 because I don't have that nostalgia, but I did think it was a good movie. So, if you have seen the new Elvis movie, what did you think? Do you agree with my assessment? Do you have any comments on the historicity of it? Please let me know in the comments below. This has been Jane. I'll see you next time. Bye.